I think we're a minute past 7. We have a pretty good agenda tonight. Shouldn't be too bad. We'll start with pledge of allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alright, and we'll start with roll call.
Okay, Mayor Minnie,
Here.
Brenneman,
Here.
Keel,
There.
Monahan,
Here.
O'Hara, Randall,
Here.
and Jones.
Yep.
Alright, do we have any additions or a motion to approve the agenda?
I make a motion to approve. Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Alright, we have a motion on last meeting minutes.
I'd make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from October 20.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And no bills submitted from Kayla. Alright. Next item is public input on any non-agenda items, so if you have anybody from the public that would like to speak, talk, bring anything up, it's just on any non-agenda items.
Jeremy, I'd like to tell the city thank you for
And actually, have you come on up to the podium, make sure Karen get your name for the minutes, sorry about that.
Alan Martins.
Elmer.
Yeah. I'd like to thank you guys for getting the yellow paint on the corner of Opal and Crestman. As far as obstructing the views and everything like that, that's helped quite a bit. It would be nice, you guys did put up 2 stop signs. I would almost suggest putting up a 4-way there. I talked to Teresa about another speed limit sign down the block. We've been having a lot of problems with that. Put that out there, and then possibly another stop sign down by the cul-de-sac coming out when you get on Opal, just to kind of slow people down. And we've got a lot of problems with construction vehicles and just local residents well exceeding the 20 mile an hour. I mean, they're going through their 30 plus. It's pretty easy to understand, to see it and judge it. But at any rate, I'd like to say thank you for at least the yellow paint. So.
Absolutely. I'm glad that's helping. I'm glad the stop signs have done some things up there. I know we looked, I think it was at our last meeting, we looked at the readings of speeds through that area. I don't remember the average.
I tell you what, I left those at home tonight, but we had 2 high speeds on that block, going east and going west. And one was 70, and the other one was in excess of 60. And I realize it doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen. So
That's hard to do on that street.
Pardon me?
That'd be hard to do on that street.
Well, they're getting it done.
They're
getting it done.
Yeah, high speeds and that aren't always, those tubes are designed to be 4 foot apart. If they happen to move in at all, and they do roll,
Right.
so if they move in at all, it's gonna look like a lot
Well,
faster. So.
And that's fine, but I have personally watched 4-wheelers go through there in excess of 50, easy. And I've seen that more than 2 or 3 times, so. But at any rate, thanks guys.
I appreciate it.
Bad.
Thank you. Thank you.
We do have signs on order for no outlets or I can't think what it had made up as, but we do have signs that we are putting up.
That would be good. Were you guys still thinking about putting up an additional speed limit
Yeah,
sign?
we'll put that underneath this one, so.
Okay.
I think the post is already set, we're just waiting for the signs, always the base is set, we're waiting.
Right. Not to add to it, but it'd almost be nice, I don't know what you guys think, have an additional one going in, a speed limit sign, and one going out when they're going westbound to read it.
Not the deal.
Well, yeah, that's a problem, not that they'll abide by it, but I guess from knowing a few other city council people and mayors from not this community, but other communities, it seems to be that the public don't understand it until some tickets are written. Once some tickets start getting written, then they start paying attention and start slowing down.
Yeah, I know you wanna watch how many signs you put out, because once you put too many out, they get ignored.
No, I get it.
I mean, not that they're not getting ignored already.
Right.
It's just,
Yeah, but even the new development down here by Turtle Creek, for example, with the cul-de-sacs, every cul-de-sac has a stop sign. There's already a speed limit sign down in there, and they're just starting to do one foundation right now.
see those,
So,
yeah, those cul-de-sacs are coming out to a main road, and
mhm,
this one's coming out into a T intersection, so it's really not a,
right, but I'm not trying to argue with you, I'm just telling you, all these already have stop signs and a stop sign, or a speed limit sign already, and there's no houses built yet, so. Well, yeah, we got a lot of kids in that block, and my neighbor and myself have already seen some near misses, you know, and that's where it kind of brings it up, and that's why we're here tonight, so.
Thank you.
Yep.
Absolutely. Any other public input on non-agenda items? Scott, Scott. I just can't believe it. All right, we're gonna move on to applications, agreements, and hearings. We've got 705 zoning amendment hearing, first reading of ordinance 698 for off-street parking regulations.
Okay, so both of these proposed ordinances are zoning amendments, and they've gone through the P and Z board. So this first one, ordinance 698, came out of discussion about, from driveway widths when we were talking about. We had a property on North Vandemark that poured too wide of a driveway. They came in and talked to the board about it, asking for a variance. They didn't get it. But during that discussion, the planning and zoning board said, you know, where our regulations are right now, in residential, can only have a 36-foot driveway approach in the boulevard area, the city's area. Once you hit your property line, I mean, it could be wider than that, because that's their property. So when we were discussing the driveway width, a lot of times that leaves, you know, from the property line, there's usually a sidewalk 1 foot off it. There's a lot of times that 1 foot going from that 36 and then widening up on the property line, there's kind of a triangle piece in there that's kind of a dead space. So the planning and zoning had discussion that they would probably like to see a change to our ordinance that would allow that driveway width to be on the property owner side of the property wider, and then after the sidewalk, narrow down to that 36 foot. So basically, this ordinance is amending it to say that, you know, you can go as wide as you want, or, you know, same width as your driveway, on your property, up to the sidewalk, but then once you get past the sidewalk to the curb, you have to narrow down to that 36 feet. Now, on properties that don't have any sidewalks, it's still that property line is that definition of where that 36 feet need to be. So this is exactly how the planning and zoning board passed it. Me and Craig had some discussion, and he brought it up this last week. We kind of have to think about this a little bit though, because there are some properties in town where that sidewalk isn't 1 foot off the property line. Some of the sidewalks like right up next to the curb. So if we go with this wording, basically we're saying if they redo their sidewalk or their driveway, they can pour, say, a 40-foot driveway, whatever. They can pour that from their garage all the way down to the curb, basically, if that's how far their sidewalk is. So this probably isn't the best wording, to put it this way.
Do we have any exhibits to go along with this?
I do not have any exhibits, I don't have a program to do that.
It's all just words. I need pictures.
My
Most
comment,
of them, are most of them within 1 feet? Or in any new
that's what, the
construction?
newer part, that's where the standard is, 1 foot inside.
Mhm.
It can be changed by either Mitch or myself, to relocate it if if there's some reason to. But a lot of the old parts of town is where, like even on Vandemark, the street's not centered in the right of way.
Mhm.
On one side, the street's only like 2 feet off, the curb's only 2 feet off the property line. So there's actually a sidewalk on private property
On the
in
west
some
side.
areas. Sure.
Well, yeah, you have some areas that don't have sidewalk,
Yep,
too,
yeah,
right?
but those will have to go by the 36.
Those will go by the property
I
line.
don't know, just, I think we need to look at this a little closer before we jump ahead with it, because like I said, we wanna make sure you kind of cover that, because otherwise, like Teresa's saying, if the curb, if the sidewalk's up against the curb, which we do have properties like that, they could pour it all the way up there, and then put a drop curb in some of that, you know, or transition it in, and you'd still have a wide driveway, I mean, huge driveway, and all, the whole front yard would just be concrete. Plus, there's, I know the reason why some of this got kind of thrown, the way it was put in originally was a lot of these duplexes. We didn't want to have all that sidewalk out to allow, I mean, duplexes, fourplexes, that whole thing could just be basically the driveway coming down.
The only thing that potentially regulated would be our ordinance limiting how much concrete
Yeah.
lot could have poured on it in certain instances.
And I've been thinking about this, and I'm not sure how to word it, but
The other thing that I saw when I looked at this is that, so along the street side of the sidewalk, and if no sidewalk, driveway shall not exceed 36 feet at the property line. What I looked at, and I have some scratch drawings here, but potentially, if somebody wanted to push that envelope, what I see is they narrow it down to that 36, but then it's at the property line, shall not exceed 36 feet at the property line, so they could, how do I say this, they could kind of angle it this way and really make it wide at that point. And I even mentioned this to someone on planning and zoning, and I said, are you sure this is what you really want? Because this is what I'm computing in my head. And I think they're also seeing that things maybe need to be changed a little bit too.
Teresa, when was zoning regulation 687 approved?
I'd have to go and grab the book to
Not
look.
very long ago, probably. 20
No,
years.
because we're 698, so
Yeah.
probably,
11 amendments ago, or 11.
yeah.
So because we just adjusted this last year, maybe 2 years ago?
we changed we made it more standardized for the approach coming in, and to have it at 42 foot.
We did, we added the wording about the flare
Yeah.
onto this, so yeah.
And so for me, I feel like it's interesting that because someone does something, pours their driveway 40-some feet. Well, how wide is Mr. Scott Park in his driveway?
I don't wanna say it's like 44.
44, right, yeah, like I said, I think I remember
Okay.
44 is what the variance.
So this is generated by somebody not really following our zoning regulation, 687. Then requesting a variance, and then the planning and zoning in their goodwill attempt to amend our off-street parking regulations to fit the situation.
Do we have other properties though in town that are hedging on this?
That we
I
do.
believe there's been variances in the past.
Yes,
Yeah, that
okay.
came out
And I-
during,
I'm wondering if that's not why they just decided, you know, instead of all these variances, let's just,
Right. But yeah, we didn't, we just didn't look at these very long ago, so that's what spurred all of this.
yeah, we added not that long ago about the flare, because we had no wording about how wide the flare can be and how that would be worded.
And ultimately, no matter what ordinance we pass, there's nobody going around effectively enforcing them. They're all kind of mute anyway. But based on those inputs, I would say we kick it back to planning and zoning for further review.
Yeah, I think it needs, this one needs further looking at because of all those other situations that could arise.
It is hard in planning and zoning to draft an ordinance.
Oh, yeah, you've
That
been through
one
it.
size fits all. There's always an exception, and you can't zone ugly. Someone's always gonna find it ugly.
Any other discussion? You need a motion to kick it back to planning
I
and
think,
zoning?
yeah, let's do
Maybe it's
that,
the first
'cause
reading.
then it'll take away the first reading of it, yeah.
Motion to send ordinance 698 back to planning and zoning for further review and amendment.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstained? Okay, we have first reading of ordinance 699, amendment to the zoning definitions.
This is a little bit easier one, basically. It's just, changing definition, or just adding to the definition of what a structure is in our planning and zoning regulations. Everything is completely the same for structures, but we're adding that we're going to, look at in-ground pools, we're gonna consider them a structure now. And so it just clarifies, so anybody who wants to do an in-ground pool, basically, they've got to meet like all the regulations of a structure. So mainly for placement and setbacks, they've got to meet that. Planning and zoning, last year we talked a lot with, there's a lot of above ground pools going on, and there's a lot of back and forth discussion of how to regulate pools. It really isn't a good way. So basically it just ended up, let's just regulate for placement, the in-ground pools, and that way there's certain setback requirements, just like a structure that they've gotta comply with. As far as the fencing and having the lock gates, that's already in our ordinance with the International Property Code, so all pools are covered under that. So as far as liability and safety issues there, we've already got that covered. But they were talking a little bit more of, do we need to regulate where somebody puts their pool, you know? Is it too close to the property line, you know, is it gonna infringe on neighbor? That discussion went back and forth a lot, and finally it just came back to, you know, if they're above ground pools and it's on somebody's property, that's their responsibility. Their liability, if they drain it and floods somebody, you know, a neighbor next to them, it all falls back onto the property owner, basically. But in-ground pools, we definitely want to regulate them, since they are a permanent structure, so that's what this would do.
So we regulate where our neighbors can, or where we can place our 1,200 square foot or less outbuildings, but not our above ground pools.
Sure, yeah, they decided not to regulate placement for above ground pools.
Are you gonna regulate play sets?
Should, especially if they're in a
What
drainage.
about that $5 above ground pool I buy for my kids and pull out of the shed? I don't know more, they're too old, but. It's an above ground pool.
I will say that an above ground pool is permanent. People that are putting above ground pools in aren't taking them down in the winter. They're permanent structures. And if you look on the corner of Nicholson and 38, or Western 38, I'm sorry,
Mhm.
Western 38,
Yeah,
there's a
that one
perfect
came up
example
during
of
our
that.
discussion, yeah.
So I think this is missing above ground pools.
So just to, for lack of a better term, play the devil's advocate, but can they be taken down? I'm with you, but
Sure.
but I'm just gonna say the other side, can they be taken down?
Absolutely. But the way that they're designed, built, and installed and wired, at least all of them that I've done over the past 5 years, they're not. They're permanent structures that are above ground. No different than an outbuilding.
Most cases, they're building a walkway, everything around them.
Yep.
In most cases.
There's permanent electrical installed to them, there's
Yep.
pumps.
I was saying, and that was one of our meetings, like I said, they talked about this 4 or 5 times, and we tried to, there's so many different kinds of above ground pools. There's some with the pumps and, you know, all the wiring and whatnot. There's some, the blow up ones, some the plastic ones. Do you allow them in your front yard? Do you allow them in your backyard? How far do they need to, there's just so many different varieties out there. They were finding a hard time of how to regulate that. And they just considered them, like you said, you know, they all could be taken down there and they're not
Same
gonna,
thing
they're
applies
not
to,
affixed to the ground.
same thing applies to outbuildings. You can buy them at Home Depot, Menards, Lowe's. I can throw it together this weekend.
Why don't you just regulate pools based on how many gallons they are? Cause a blow-up pool's not gonna exceed 200, 300 gallons. Any permanent, quote-unquote, permanent above-ground or in-ground pool is gonna be in excess of probably 1,000 gallons, at least.
And that was talked about too, but then where's that number, like you said, that, you know, is 900 okay and 1,000 not okay, and that was a discussion with them.
There's a lot of money left in the P and Z budget, they haven't had all their meetings this year, so.
We should
There's
let
something
them,
to talk about.
we should let them talk about it again.
I don't
Oh,
think,
my
I
goodness
don't think it'd take a lot of research to figure out what the biggest
Inflatable.
inflatable pool is. And then cap it at that, because nobody's gonna leave an inflatable pool up all winter. So you just find out what that cap is, and then set the regulation at that. And not regulate that or anything smaller, and regulate something that many or greater. Yes, Craig?
One thing to keep in mind too is it's not just because it's too close, but I mean, if they would happen to have a leak in it, where's that water gonna go? So I think the gallon thing would be nice to have in there, so if somebody's got 1,500 gallon or 2,000 gallon pool there and it rips, where's that water going? I mean, it'd be nice to be able to shift them and have some type of placement with them, so you know they're not gonna drown out the neighbor's place. Cause even like the blow up ones, I mean, if something happens to it, where that water's going somewhere.
Yeah, but those, I mean, typically those aren't that big.
No, so I'd kind of watch, you know, I think that, you know, every year it seems like they make a bigger one or something, you know, of them, but it'd be interesting to see how many gallons they actually hold versus.
Well, I mean, think about it. Drop tank, those are 1,800 to 2,000 gallons, and they're
10 by
30,
10,
30 inches tall by 10 feet wide, 12 feet wide, 16. So it don't take long to get 1,000, 2,000 gallons of water. So, I mean, like,
It's Craig, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so like even on our street, on Opal, we've got a very, very large above-ground pool that's across from me, which doesn't bother me one bit. However, if you look at the structure on it, on the main beams, it's wrinkled in both, on like 3 or 4 main beams. And the neighbor right next door, you know, he's sitting there,
dog
biting his tongue, wondering if that's gonna collapse and go into his egress window. And I bet you that pool is at least over 12,000 gallons of water. That's big. It's probably closer to 20. So,
That guy, former city council person?
pardon me?
That guy, former city council person, he's got a pool?
I couldn't tell you. I
No,
could not tell you.
No?
no, I know which one he's talking
Oh.
about, no.
All right,
Do we have any motion? Motion to send ordinance 699 back to planning and zoning for further review.
second.
all right, discussion. We'll vote. Randall?
Yes.
O'Hara?
Yes.
Keel?
Yes.
Brendan?
Yeah.
Jones?
Yes.
Am I right? Yeah. P and Z is gonna love us.
They are real loud.
They're very well, yeah.
It's Randall out. All Ron's idea. That's the story. Tony, you hear that? I'll talk right to the camera, so you
All right, we're gonna move to reports. Get the Minnehaha County Sheriff's Report, Deputy Curtis.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Happy to bring my laptop today. It's been a busy day today. Alrighty, so you guys have the 30-day review of October. Really not much highlights from the last time I was here a couple weeks ago. As into traffic stops is the biggest one. There's been a decrease of 12 from our 119 that we had in October with 39 sites. Which was a decrease of 3, and the rear warnings, 56, which was an increase of 3. And then our verbal warnings are going down by 10. Regarding the traffic complaints that that we talked about here last week, that was emailed out to the night deputies and the weekend deputies so that they can kind of focus on that and so that they can patrol in those areas. The biggest thing I would say is the call for service numbers are going up as we're averaging over 11 calls for service now, where last time I was here was flat at 11. Excuse me. The biggest thing that I've kind of been seeing is with a lot of people, well, after the first snowfall, we had a lot of people not putting their trailers up right away. They're on the ground for, over that 3-day limit, and then after it got nice out, people started putting their stuff away. And I've been going out to talking with those folks and making those contacts with them. And another plan that I have implemented, it's been a pretty busy week for me, I haven't done this yet, but I'm going to all the apartment complexes and advising them of all the parking ordinances, because there are a lot of people that are violating that parking ordinance of it's more than 3 days, or the trailers are parked there for more than 3 days. So that's been on my game plan to kind of reach out with those apartment complex people. Halloween trunk or treat was a huge, really good turnout. I had a blast doing that. It was constant. It was constant. Folks coming, and we handed out so much candy. I had another deputy out there with me. He had a really good time participating in that and passing out candy to the kids and stuff. So, and as far as you guys know, COVID numbers are going up. And when COVID first hit with us, we as law enforcement need to be careful with how many contacts we have with people, so that we're not out of work, so that we're still serving and going to those calls of services. So just be aware that there's probably going to be a decrease in traffic stops obviously as it gets colder out, and with these COVID numbers that we're kind of experiencing, because we can't really afford, because we're already at minimums quite often, we can't really afford getting sick if we're kind of reckless of doing a lot of traffic stops and making a lot of contact with people. I can tell you the last 5 contacts I had on traffic stops, they were COVID positive. So I just kind of backed away, didn't touch anything, just wiped my hands and said, slow down, no citation or nothing like that. So that they can, because they were going home, because they just got the results back and they're getting groceries or something. So I was like, all right, don't be driving out, that kind of thing, and kind of respected what they're telling me. So just kind of a heads up on your guys' end, that we are seeing a lot of COVID positive cases when we are going to calls, and also on traffic stops as well too. So that's all. That's my rundown report. As you guys have the report in front of you, and I don't want to bore you with my boring monotone voice and putting you guys to sleep. So I'll leave it up to you guys if there's any questions that I can answer.
So the best way to get out of the ticket is just
Just
say
say
you
you
got
got
COVID.
COVID.
Mark, just cough incessantly.
Yeah.
Just got my results, I gotta get home.
Thank you guys for participating in that trunk or treat, and that was awesome.
Yeah, it was really fun, so hopefully we can, my plan is to get more involved in community events as well too, once, it gets nicer out. As we're getting into winter, probably not as much, but yeah, I had a really fun time doing that, so I want to continue doing that, so. Cool, alright, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Alright, we got our engineer report, Mitch.
Yeah, engineering report wise, I really don't have much to update you guys on. We do have the easements for the sewer extension on the agenda tonight, right? So we've been working on getting those in place and secured with Mr. Halligan. Don't have any action items to speak of, so if you guys have any questions on projects, I'd be happy to answer them.
When can we expect a resolution for 9th Street?
I'm still waiting to hear back from the contractor. They did some additional testing out there. I have not seen those results yet. I would have thought we maybe would have saw them already, so I would expect to see them soon and have some resolution there.
Last time we saw you, there was a bunch of numbers being tossed around about an invoice for some street widths. Any further contact contact with that engineer for South Main?
So that night while we were in the council meeting, I sent an email to the engineer asking for that breakdown that they referenced, and he got back to me and said he would send it, I haven't seen it yet.
So that's why it's not on the agenda, so
Yeah.
as soon as we get that, we'll bring it forward to you guys again.
At what point do we direct Teresa to just never show us that again? You can't continuously submit invoicing for payment. I mean, there's a,
I mean, we'll be looking at this 40 years down the road.
if my bank account was a little short one month and I had an outstanding account, it was 5 years old, it'd laugh me out of the room, you know? And in this case, it's 16 years old.
I'd like to see that if, in the event Teresa ever gets the correct invoice,
Yeah.
to bring it up in a meeting and ask if we wanna entertain it, I think would be the way to go. But I think it starts with the correct invoice,
Sure. Absolutely.
so. Cause it goes back to 2002.
Before is when the original for the whole
Yeah.
development plans came through, so, yeah.
Yeah, so.
Yeah.
I think that's the jump off point if the invoice ever gets generated, the correct invoice.
Yeah.
I noticed they were seeding along Mickelson. Are we outside the seed window as you always talk about?
Yep. Yeah, way up. So
They were there yesterday.
they are, we call it a dormant seed, so they're putting seed down in hopes that it'll
Yeah,
germinate next spring.
that's what I figured. I just thought I'd throw that out.
100% chance if it's laying there now, it'll hit that seed window in the spring.
Could. That's good. I've been looking for that window.
Or a rot in the ground.
Or,
We'll have them come back in the spring.
that's, yeah, I was just curious.
Yeah.
The dormant seed frequently has a decent success rate.
Yeah, it really depends on the year, and if you have a big area, sometimes you're not as successful because the wind can take some of it. But yeah, it's on our project. It seems it's 50-50. We have years where it comes up just great and fine, and we have years where it just struggles.
I've noticed there's some digging on South Street and it doesn't even show up in the force account like of a plat review. Is that,
Got that Reimers?
Oh, are they
Did you
digging
look
out there
down?
now? Yeah. We just did some plan reviews late last week, and so probably before we
Last
issued
couple
this
weeks.
report. Yeah.
how about some work being done up on Road Lane?
That's that stall commercial building?
Are they digging up there too? That was a while ago that we reviewed their plans, I'd say 2 months ago or so.
They just pulled the permit this week?
So, I have a question. When these things are happening.
Yep.
The other day, I actually had a question from a citizen about across from Gillespie's there,
Okay.
that lot. And they said, and I realize that there's some things that, are in the process,
Sure.
but I think we as council members just know how to address those things, and there are some things that are confidential and there are some things that aren't. But it's really difficult for me, and when a citizen comes to me and says, hey, what's going on Rood Lane or wherever, and maybe I haven't even been there and seen it,
Sure.
and then I have that deer in the headlight look. I'm just wondering am I missing communication on that,
Well,
or?
So when we used to get a site plan like that, it usually comes through Teresa, and she forwards it to us to review, and we send the comments back to her. So there's always a record down at City Hall of how we've commented on the project, how the building code officers commented on the plans and whatnot. Until they pull a building permit, really, there's not a project until they do that, and our office isn't necessarily involved with that part of it, but ways to keep you guys in the know of what's happening, and we'd have to maybe brainstorm a little bit on
I think usually it becomes public when they pull the permit and it's actually a project, I mean, because before that, it's their land and they can do what they want and what. You know, if you guys want an ongoing report sent to your council packet of here, plots that are coming through, or like you said, site plans or whatnot, I mean, we haven't done it in the past, we can certainly start generating it, I mean, that's been brought up earlier, so.
For me anyway, I think that'd be extremely helpful.
Just remember though, some things
Yes.
are, some projects, the owner wants to keep confidential for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe I just need to note that to you guys. Yeah.
I mean, you send out the building permits issue.
Yeah, and like I said, that's when it becomes public, or
But did
That's
that have a
monthly.
building permit? I've
they
never
just pulled one this week. Yeah.
Okay, and it was like well, it's probably about 10, 14 days ago, probably 10 days ago, I got the question. So.
And they can move dirt without a building permit, they just can't put in foundation, they can't do anything with the building
Okay.
without a building
You
permit.
just need an excavation permit.
No, when we passed that excavation permit, or the grading permit, as I was talking about,
Yeah,
we said as long as they are gonna do it within conjunction of a building permit, we weren't gonna make them fill out both and pay for both.
Oh, okay.
Now, if they were just gonna do like Sam Assam and move dirt, now he had to pull a grading permit because he wasn't building any houses or he's actually doing a development.
Yeah, to my point, the timeline to me seems like I was at a meeting last Monday, so a week and a half ago. And there was a variance request on a Tuesday for planning and zoning, and in that variance request, there was comment regarding that Stockwell Review site made some comments. So this, in my opinion, this force account should reference that work. That's why I bring it up.
Yeah, you're talking,
South Street work.
yeah, because we didn't send any comments until, I don't know when we sent them Friday even.
Well, I sent plans to you and you needed more information,
Yeah.
you wanted to then keep submitting, you didn't do your comments until.
Yeah, we didn't send, until, I thought it was Monday that we sent comments out. I'll have to
Or
look
waiting
back.
the comments, but I mean, I forward you on like his drainage plan
Yeah.
and
You know,
you know what he had submitted.
to LeBron's point.
You said
I
you
was
needed
on
more information.
Right.
Planning and zoning long enough, and I've been on council long enough, that there are times you feel like a mushroom,
Sure.
and you're reactive, and so you can always delete an email or file it if it just contains something that doesn't interest you, but if you don't know about it, and you're constantly reacting, and there are times in the development of a city when projects come in rapid succession, the flow of information is not necessarily in front of you, it's behind you. So I would say yes, the more information we have as a city council, the better off we as a city council are.
I don't understand the expectation that the city council is supposed to know everything that's going on in this town every day. Because I've always handled I've never been asked a question and felt like I was a deer in the headlights. Because if I'm asked what's going on in a certain area, I say, I don't know, but I'll find out.
Oh, sure.
And then you can call Teresa or Craig. I mean, you can literally make a phone call during business hours and find out.
And I'm perfect.
And then get back to that person.
Yeah, which I do, but when it catches you by surprise, and I think as we go on, we're seeing more and more in our informational age, people are very wanting to know, and I think we're seeing a different level of expectation from city council members. And I just want to not be completely in the dark about things. I would like to be able to at least have some idea of some things that are going on. And certainly, I always say that to people, I don't care if it's in my professional life or anywhere. You know, that's a great question. I'll get back with you. But I think it would be helpful for us to have some information available as things are progressing.
If our job involved 18 wheels and a blue parrot, and we weren't constantly on the phone for our work, we could make those phone calls, but I would prefer to have it on that show.
Although I think it's just personal preference, because I'm not there, I'm with Mark on that, if I'm gonna answer that question to that citizen, I'm probably gonna get it wrong anyway. So I would direct him to City Hall and even say, you know what, rather than me be the conduit in this case, and this is just my personal preference, you know what, maybe check with you, check with City Hall on a certain thing, you can sure check on this or that. I think sometimes, and I know what your personal preference is, and I get it, I totally understand what your personal preference is, it's not mine. And, so I don't know if there's a right answer to it, but we're not gonna know everything that happens here, we're just not. I think we gotta keep our eye on the bigger picture than every project where we're going to exhaust ourselves.
Yeah, in order for that to, so if, let's say a plat review comes in, Stockwell sees it, makes notes, communicates back and forth with Teresa, and then it lays dormant for a month and a half, 2 months. Then they come in and pull a building permit. So then Teresa would have to notify, email or whatever the case may be, that so-and-so pulled a building permit as they come in and go out. But then they're under no obligation to start construction then. Or they pull a dirt work permit or a flat work permit, they're under no obligation to start. They're under no obligation to notify City Hall when they do proceed. So how do you, I just don't understand how you wrap your hands around that. Because they could literally start moving dirt or flat work at their leisure.
So there's no dirt being moved currently on Knapp's Landing, but we see that on the force account. So my expectation would be if there's dirt being moved on a site, at some point we should see it on the force account.
If there's dirt being moved, you should see it on the force count.
Sure, there should be some review there, there should be some mention of it.
Can't they move dirt without running it through Stockwell's? I think they can. They don't have to answer to Teresa or Stockwell or anybody else to move dirt.
So,
You don't need a permit to move dirt.
just on the force account,
Yeah,
we just see some things consistently.
Can I elaborate on what I
Sure.
tend to put in the force account, I guess, Travis? Because I look back, because we do a report every 2 weeks. I'm simply looking back at what we've logged for time
Gotcha.
on our force account for that last 2 weeks and
Sure.
reporting it. You know, it's not the last month or the last 2 months for that, it's just since the last report. And if you want something, if you want the last month, I can sure do that. If you want more detail on these items, I mean, I can always provide that.
Right.
But that's really what all I'm doing here is logging the last 2 weeks of tying it to that.
Right, there are certain projects that consistently make the force account, and there are other projects that seem to be moving so rapidly
Yeah.
that they're just literally, they're
Yep.
digging a foundation and
Yep.
it's not even on your radar, so.
All right, any other questions for Mitch?
So clarification, do you want me to give you more on the front side of, before they pull permits with projects, or?
I'm happy with the way it is right now. Because my feeling is, I really don't care what's going on up there. I've got nothing to do with it as a city council person. I didn't approve nothing. It's not like, now if it's our city land, then I better know what's going on there. But I really don't care if you're building a new house somewhere, or you're putting a new shop up there. I mean, as a city council member, that's really not my responsibility to answer that question to the person. Now, if we had involvement with it, say tax incentives or whatever, then I would expect I should be able to answer that question. That's just me. So, cause I got asked today too. Somebody said, what's going on by the last meeting? I said, I have no clue. And I didn't feel bad about saying that. I didn't even offer to find out.
Well, and when
So, I don't know. Maybe
when the building permits are pulled, we can see that, or applied for, whatever, we can see that. It's just if that gets waylaid, then we don't see, and then it's a surprise.
No, just trying to wrap my head around timing, communication, transparency, in the know, not in the know. Again, there are certain things that happen over the course of enough time on any committee where you feel like a mushroom.
Sure.
Just in the dark.
So I guess Teresa, if those of us that wanna know, we'll just call you. At this, I mean, we can always open that up for discussion again, if somebody else feels like, I feel like I might be about the strongest feeling one on the council about that, but I just, I like to serve my constituents and not be, as Travis says, a mushroom like, so.
I think our job is to know who to call. That's our job.
Sure.
We need to know who to call. So if we have a question that we can't answer today, I call Teresa. If I have a question for Craig or somebody asks me something, I'll pick up the phone and call Craig. Our job is to be able to find out, get that answer for that person. Whatever that word would be. I used my one big word earlier. So.
Yeah, you did well too.
Expediently, thank you. I used eloquently earlier, so that was my one big word for the day. Oh, yeah. That was bold. Okay.
All right,
Anyway,
we're gonna move on.
that's fine.
All right, we're gonna move on. Public Works, right.
So some of these projects, I would call Teresa directly because I don't even know about them until need to know basis, or when it's out so I always ask her, okay, is this out in the public yet? Because the guys are asking what's going on here, and I always go through her to find out if it's supposed to be public knowledge. So I would recommend calling her on stuff like that, so. Because I'll probably give you the same thing, I'll find out for you. So.
you think the cannon, Greg?
Otherwise, my report, we're up to 165 now, new meters in. And then the main lift station, that pump is back together and up and running. Otherwise, I have nothing really new in my report. If there's any questions.
I got a dumb question for you.
Okay.
What's your standard start time?
Typically 7:30, to 4:30, but sometimes it's later and stuff like that. And then the other guys are 8, 7:38. So we always gotta have somebody here till 5.
Any other questions for Craig? All right, thanks, Craig. Move to Karen's report.
Nothing to add, unless you have questions.
I hear none. Good report, thank you, Karen.
Sure.
All right, we'll move to Teresa's report.
Nothing to really add, just want to remind you again that there's 2 special meetings this month, November 23rd and 24th. It's a Monday and Tuesday, and that's when we're going to do the interviews for the engineering firm. So make sure you mark that in your calendar. And
We meet at 7 for that?
Yep, the plan 7 to 9, 1 hour for each firm. So we'll do 2 firms one night, 2 firms the next night. The plan on it. And then, just so you know, we hired Jeff Van Overbeek as a part-time snow removal help. He helped last year too, so he reapplied. We're gonna keep it out there a little bit longer to see if maybe we can pick up one more person. I don't know if they have a CDL or if they don't have a CDL, we can still use them even if they don't have a CDL for cleaning sidewalks and stuff like that. So we're still advertising and looking if anybody's interested. not really much more on that. I do want to show you guys, if you remember, we allocated funds for marketing video. Gabe had asked that with the Strome Company, and they sent me the proof of it here, so I kind of wanted to show you, maybe a little better if the lights were. Just get your take on it before any final. Get your thoughts and feelings on it before you go. So.
Boy, whiteboard would be nice right now, wouldn't
Oh,
Hey, I got my 2 cents in.
All
I
right.
think
here's
next
what
year
the
we're
company-
gonna give one, I think, next year.
Yeah.
Just to make me
With
mad?
memorial whiteboard.
Sean,
Yeah.
you are what they refer to as a man about town.
Man,
I don't know how the heck I got
you're in there.
to do that, yeah.
Got a lot of airtime. So I guess just wondering, thoughts, feelings, comments. I told the company, you know, I'd show it to the council and get their input from it and see if we want any changes, revisions, we like it, we should pay for it. Or-
Yeah, I'm curious, I'm thinking about that here a little bit. We allocated $1,000.
Okay, $1,000 out of the third penny. We had to pay 50% down, so 500's been paid to them, and then we haven't paid anything. This video came about a week ago. It was, it was after our last meeting, and I said that I would show it to the council and then get back to them if we're satisfied with it or not.
And this would really just be to own the video, do with it whatever we decide. we
Have the
want
rights
do
to
with
the
it.
video, yep, so we
We'll
could put on.
edit it, shorten it, change it a little bit. If we had somebody to do that, we could do whatever we want to with that video.
Yeah, it'd be to,
Wouldn't
purchase
have to
the video.
necessarily be full length, stuff like that, I would imagine.
I think the intent was to put it on the city webpage and have it run in a full-time
Kind of full
on
time
there.
there. Mm-hmm.
When, that's where we're pitching.
yeah, he.
We allocated 1,000, but say again, what's the cost?
We allocated, that is the cost.
That is the
Yeah,
cost.
that's what the contract costs. We had to pay half, 50%, so we paid 500 when we started, so there's another 500 due.
So we pay 500, we get the 1 minute video, we don't pay 500, we don't get in.
Found the contract in his office. I think it's 500 is due upon signing of the contract, and then another 500 is due upon final completion and delivery of the media.
So we owe them anyway.
Yeah.
So I think we're gonna
I
owe
think
them
we do.
anyway. It's
Yeah.
just, are we gonna take it and this form, or do we want them to tweak it or change it somehow before we take the last deliverable, yeah?
Is there any way, could you play it again without the background music?
I can turn my music off, yeah.
I'd just be curious what it looks like without the.
Jazzy tune?
Whitewall sessions jamming?
Well, I wonder how much the music distracts you.
Quite a bit.
I think it does. If I'm gonna honestly critique it.
How do they get that drone and the goat?
And there's a lot of, I think I put in my report, there's a lot of, Naughty Gnome and the Goat. They only allowed 2 businesses to go into 2 businesses, otherwise all the rest had to be drone footage, and I guess that's the 2 businesses that, picked, so, okay. What'd you do, Craig?
That was one of the longest minutes of my life.
Can't get that back. You know the first thing I noticed? We have an elevator.
You can ask them to cut 2 of those out.
Well-
I think there's cut 2 of
We
those.
like, we like our booze.
Huh?
There's way too many shots of alcohol.
Yeah, the alcohol, in my opinion, the first thing I'd take out of it, I don't mind the pictures of the goat pool table, the goat emblem, Georgia sitting there eating wings, I don't mind that, but the Jameson, I mean,
Another light.
the shots of the alcohol on the shelf, I think the alcohol on the shelf needs to come out, and probably cut half the shots of the elevator out of it.
That was the first
I
thing I
mean,
noticed.
you could, because literally that's probably 7 seconds. And I think I'd rather see 7 seconds of kids playing, new house being built, something, other than alcohol in the silos. But
Okay, send these comments to them, see if they can revise it, and the next one's on.
that's just my opinion.
Yeah. No,
I
I agree
think
with that.
most people were nodding. That sounds good.
I agree.
Yeah,
Okay, I'll give them that input then, so.
makes me hungry. There's wings.
Well,
Huh?
All right, anything else on Teresa's report? All right, we have old business, discuss advertising at Swenson Sports Complex. Anybody here to discuss that tonight?
Go there again.
Okay, entertain it, or we can move on, or entertain a motion to table.
Has Matt been asked to come? Did we
Oh,
ask?
yes.
Okay. I'd make a motion to table till the next meeting.
Motion to table in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Good man. business, review or approve the sewer easement agreements with DVH Investments.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Are we doing both or one?
Yeah, for both.
Discussion. Hearing none, we'll vote. Monahan?
Yeah.
Jones?
Yes.
Brennan?
Yeah.
Keel?
Yes.
O'Hara?
Yes.
Randall?
Yes.
Alright. Can we get the assessment for the 9th Street project? Looking at it under there, assessment costs.
Yeah, so now that 9th Street is substantially complete, we'll be doing an assessment roll, just like we did with Vandermark and Mickelson Road, you know, in there. We have to set a public hearing date, so we have to put a notice in the paper, and then we have to also send that notice to all the affected property owners. So that date is essentially gonna be our December 1st meeting. But for the roll, I have a sample one in there, but we just have to make sure the council here has to set basically, the years of the repayments, the percentage of the interest rates, and set that public hearing date and time. And then I can send out those letters with that information to the affected property owners. So there's a sample roll in there, a draft of what the roll would look like. I put in there, installments, if they don't pay the city, you know, and I guess I should back up, you know, we changed our assessment policy that basically allows whenever we do a project, we allow them till the following October 1st in which to pay for that assessment without any interest to the city before it gets sent to the county and gets put on any of these payment plans. We put that right to our assessment policy. Last year we changed it. So this project, basically, we're gonna send, you know, if we pass this, we're gonna send them a letter saying, you have till October 1st, 2021, in which to pay your assessment interest-free to the city. But then, when October 1st, 2021 comes, just like we did with Vandermark, whoever hasn't paid, that amount will get sent to the county for collections each year with their taxes. If it gets sent to the county for collections, like I said, we've always, with street projects, we put them on a 10-year installment plan, so basically it gets divided up in 10 years, and the interest rate of 10%. That's what we did with the last 2 projects, that's what we basically have done with every project since I've been with the city. So I just gotta verify that that's still what this council wants to do with this project, I'm assuming.
I'm gonna make a motion that we do the 10-year, 10% interest, and, Midlothian County, and what I believe was option 1, Teresa, is that right, as presented.
Okay.
Have the county, collect.
County collective, yeah.
Okay, we have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion on that? Okay, vote, Keel,
Yes.
O'Hara,
Yes.
Randall,
Yes.
Brennan,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Monahan.
Yeah. You need a motion to confirm the cost, Teresa, the assessed.
Yeah, to confirm that $100, I mean, it's set in our policy, but let's,
I'm gonna make a motion to approve the assessment to the properties as presented.
Second.
Discussion. None? We'll vote, Brennan,
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
Monahan,
Yeah.
Randall,
Yes.
O'Hara,
Yes.
and Keel.
Yes.
When did you think it'd be a good time to set that?
I would say, and the last one is, if you can have December 1st, 7:05 hearing.
I'll make that a motion. For the, public hearing.
Second.
No discussion? We'll vote, Randall,
Yes.
O'Hara,
Yeah.
Keel,
Yes.
Monahan,
Yeah.
Jones,
Yes.
and Brennan.
Yeah.
We'll get those letters out.
Alright, next item on the agenda, got some comments on that. Review approves job description for the Chamber Economic Development Director position. had some discussions about, with the chamber and with the HADF, about taking a look at all options on the table before we put a posting out there for this. Some of those discussions include, first I do wanna mention that, Tim McCarthy at Sioux Valley Energy reached out last week, and him and I had a conversation, and they wanna make sure that, that Hartford's well served in the interim period, and make sure that as far as economic development pieces go, that, that things don't fall through the cracks, and if they wanted to be able to help support us with that. And, he graciously offered to have Jay Buckholt, which many of you may know. He goes to several meetings in town, he goes to HADF meetings. They would basically lend him to us on basis, basically to the HADF, and allow him to work leads, work RFIs, help out with things as needed. Wouldn't be a full-time thing, probably, that 10 to 15 hour a week type range. He'd most likely need need a place to work from if he's not working from home, utilize the office and things like that, but, definitely on an interim basis between now and when we get the position filled. Talked that over with Justin at the HADF. We met along with Keel and Jones and Teresa. Talked that over a little bit. We also had Gabby from the chamber on the phone for that, and didn't see any issues with that. In fact, it's outstanding. I think some of the things we would maybe need to look into is making sure there's confidentiality agreements signed and some of those kind of things. But Tim knows, and we know this too about Jay, that stand-up individual would represent Hartford very well in the interim period, and we know confidentiality is really not an issue in that case. So wanted to discuss that a little bit. It's not an agenda item, but just kind of wanted to make people aware that those discussions are happening and open it up for anybody who's opposed to that, I guess. Anybody who thinks, hey, wait a minute, we shouldn't do that. But it looks like a great idea to me, and it would sure help out in the meantime.
I think in the interim, that's a great idea, and I do think we need to have a report back from the chamber and Development Foundation before we do anything on the agenda item.
On this agenda item. I agree. The other half of that discussion is, we also got a proposal from Jesse with Makita, and they are proposing, and it may be a fit for us and it may not be, but they're proposing that Makita hires an economic development director that would represent 1, 2, maybe 3 communities, but most likely 1 or 2 communities, and serve as an economic development director for that community. Would be assigned to that community. There'd be contracts and things set up to do that. Basically, you would contract that employee with Makita. That would be strictly on the economic development side. Looking at that, thinking about that, I don't know where the HADF feels on that piece of it. And I'm not trying to be vague with any of that, more or less not ready to make a decision on any of those things or on this, I think at this point. I think at this point we need to make sure we know that before we move forward with posting a new job out there, that we're kind of feeling things out, brainstorming between the HADF and the chamber and the city on what are the best ways we can fill that position. And it might be doing it the exact same way we've always done it, but we'd like to take some time and explore some of these other options and bring those options back to the council, obviously, and say, hey, this is kind of what it looks like.
I will speak briefly for the HADF because we discussed it at our meeting. They said it has some merit. I could see it working, but it ultimately is
questions on that, discussion on that?
I think options are always good to explore, certainly.
I think we're gonna have to get into a little more detail about what it's actually gonna entail before
For sure.
we give too much, I guess.
And it's a new concept, it's not like they haven't done this before, so there's not necessarily, can't show you the contract or what that would look like at this point, but I think it's an option worth exploring, at least looking into. The other half of that is if we go that route, it's our responsibility too to make sure that the chamber is well served as well. And so
Yes.
basically ask Gabby to go back to her executive board or her board and throw some ideas out there, what are they looking for? And the HEDF's gonna bounce some things around too. We're gonna try to get all those options out there and try to figure out what we're gonna do forward.
Whether or not if he is serving more than 2 or 3 communities, because he didn't really present the option in one community, that he would be, that person would be, it'd either be 2 or 3, 2 at the minimum, is from kind of what I understood. So there's vying for, I guess, the best interest of our city versus the other city they're working for as well, will also be something to consider when we're discussing that.
The example is if it were competing communities that person was serving, then they would just deflect that to above them, to eliminate that conflict of interest.
So, anybody would like to be part of those further discussions? Open to all of that as we get more detail, as we start to hear more from the chamber, from Teresa, from Justin, everybody involved kind of in this. We're just trying to put that together. We want to move quick, we don't want to leave this position open forever. HEDF's going to be able to get some interim help here with Jay, but the chamber doesn't necessarily at this point, so we don't want to leave them hanging for a long time. So, with that, maybe I would look for a motion to table this agenda item.
I'd make a motion to table the discussion on the chamber and economic development job description till the next meeting.
I'll second.
Okay. Vote, Keel,
Yes.
O'Hara,
Yes.
Randall,
Yes.
Monahan, Jones,
Yes.
and Burnham.
Yep.
Items for correspondence. And do we have anything we need to go into executive session for?
As an item of correspondence, I would just quickly pigtail on to Officer Kardash's comments about the trunk or treat.
Yeah, it was a big success. It was over double what we've ever had for any attendance at any Halloween event before,
Wow.
previously, and there were like a lot of different communities that came over, because most communities had canceled their events, so we were Baltic, and I think there was some Bells and Salem and Sioux Falls, and it was very good.
I had about 120 candy bars in 15 minutes. Then I stopped counting.
Man. Cool. That
The
is cool.
feedback too
That's
that I got is that it was very, very well organized.
I
People.
don't know about that, but.
Oh, they thought it was.
It appeared to be.
It appeared to be, yes. But yeah, very appreciative and the options that were available, for people depending on their thought process, so.
That's good. Good. Very positive. Good, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, executive session. Any,
One more.
okay, I don't think we have any.
What?
Yeah, we don't need that anymore, Scott. Yeah, we don't.
Oh, yeah.
8:15 and
We're
no
cut down
executive
to-
session?
Motion to adjourn?
Second? There's a second from Ryan. All in favor?
What?
Aye. Any opposed?
What did I miss in the process? I told my wife I'll wait until 9:30.
Now you know the bar. Other things you can do.
Now you know the law.